Welcome to the State of the Markets podcast. I'm Paul Rodriguez of ThinkTrading.com.
I'm Tim Price of PriceValuePartners.com.
And our very special guest is Rudy Havenstein.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is great.
So, in preparation for the pod today, I 2 seconds ago I did a quick Google search of Rudy Havenstein, and you'll be flattered to know that Rudy Havenstein is listed the first on Google as internet personality. So,
yeah, I've surpassed that other guy.
Yeah, art has replaced reality.
Yes, that's what I'm art. I'm an artist. I try to be. And there's a great Paul Krausner quote I just came across where he called himself an investigative satirist, and I love that phrase. Also, I consider
all journalists on that by definition satirists, whether they appreciate it or not. So
yeah, there's no. It's all op-ed now. Yeah, that's
so for the benefit of people who won't necessarily be schooled in centuries of economic disaster and history. Would you care to introduce yourself either as the Rudy Havenstein we're talking to, or the Rudy Havenstein that was the German president of the Reichsbank during the Weimar era hyperinflation?
Well, it's my nom de guerre or nom de plume. I don't know which. I picked it just because I don't know the day that I started a Twitter account. They must have been talking about something, and I just go, this is nuts. All the QE and the ZERP and everything, and so I went to the figure from history. He was president of the Reichsbank from 1908 to 1923. And of course, by the time they got to the teens and 20s, they were in massive hyperinflation. Of course, the World War I didn't help them. And I just thought, that's kind of, I came on, I've been doing this for many years before Twitter. I was just sending emails to friends and things like that. I've always followed the markets almost my whole life for some reason. And it's kind of a warning, not encouragement. I'm trying to tell people that, I think inflation is grossly represented understated, but also every day you can see some billionaire, like a Barry Sternlicht or a Bill Ackman, very flippantly, or some guy that's only worth, $100 million, like Jay Powell, and they're very like, inflation's 2.9%. It's been over 2% for 4 years, and they made up the 2% target, as you know. It's just nonsense. But not only is inflation much higher, but these guys poo-poo it like. I actually have quotes from Ackman and Sternlicht where they said, 4% would be fine, a 4% target. Another one who said that is Mohamed El-Erian, who blocked me after I called him out on it. It's very easy. Mohamed El-Erian.
He blocked you. Sorry, why? Because you just said inflation's higher.
Well, because I called him out on things. I said something like, it must be easy for a guy who got a $230 million bonus at PIMCO like, a dozen years ago. And I post links and quotes to everything. It must be easy for a guy, that's a billionaire to be poo-pooing inflation. And you look at the guys like, Paul Krugman or Justin Wolfers or Furman or any of these guys, Greg Epp and they mock people. Kashkari did it too. They mock people who worried about higher inflation. Back 5 years ago, Kashkari was like making fun of, him and I have gotten into it over the years. He doesn't bother me anymore, but, and I would ask, why is higher inflation? You remember when the Fed in like 2019, 2020, they changed their whatever they call it, I forget, paradigm to seek higher inflation above 2%.
Dual mandate.
Well, their I think their dual mandate is to privatize profits and socialize losses.
Because the main part of that mandate is price stability. So the fact that the US dollar has lost roughly 99% of its purchasing power since the Fed was established would tend to give the lie to the success of that narrative. But let's not stand on detail.
I can't believe on Fred you can still get that chart. It's that data series. Yeah, purchasing power of the consumer dollar. It's hilarious. And that's if you believe the CPI numbers, which I don't. So it's worse than even that.
We had the pleasure of having Doomberg on a while ago. And
he's great.
As you probably know, not that I know who Doomberg is or are, but we were joined by a chicken-related personality with a voice distortion machine. We're not having a voice distortion machine this time, but to what extent would you care to say anything about your biographic reality in real life? So, what is the nature of you? To what extent do you bring yourself here as a, let's say, as a representative of sound money and someone who's clearly had experienced the financial system and the workings of finance?
Sure. Well, I started in a very middle class family. Dad was a teacher. I've said all this before. My mom took care of the kids, 4 kids, and I started working, middle school, and I always had a job. Never took a penny from my parents after, early grades, and then I worked for many years in a business. I guess today you'd call it a startup. And I've always had an interest in financial markets because I always had money, and this is in the 70s, 70s of making money. And I'm young, and my parents never owned any stocks. I mean, he's a teacher, and so I don't know where I got the interest in it, but I always, I've said before, my grandfather had built a shed in the back of our house that wasn't permitted, and later we got in trouble for it. But anyway, it was full of books. My dad was a history major, and there was tons of books in there. So I'd go in there and I'd read the books. So I was always reading nonfiction. In fact, even to this day, I don't read fiction, almost never. So I had an interest in it over the years, and I remember things. I remember listening on the radio. I had the radio on in like 1982 when Henry Kaufman came out, and the bull market started. I didn't realize at the time, or I'd be a billionaire today, but I was dabbling in all sorts of things, mutual funds and stocks, and learning my lessons young.
Sorry to interrupt. Was Henry Kaufman Dr. Doom?
Yes, he was the original. I think they call Rubini that now, but he was the Dr. Doom. So and I was only what was I in 82? Like 19 or something, so I remember hearing that. Now, of course, like I said, I didn't like rush in to buy or anything. I didn't realize at the time the significance of this 40-year bull market, or this 40-year drop in interest rates too, because I was investing my what I was making in 14% money market funds back then. And so then I remember the 87 crash. All I remember from that, because I wasn't watching the markets daily back then.
You can't even call it a crash. You can only call it a blip now.
Now it's a blip. Yeah, it was a blip, but 22%. All I remember is I had some
at the time.
I remember I had some compact shares. Remember Compact Computer, and I remember them going down like 20%. I was like, "Ooh, that's unpleasant," but it wasn't enough to really bother me. And of course, you're talking. It's good to make your mistakes when you're young and you don't have a decent amount of money, and you learn. And I did learn a lot. And then I started
there hadn't
becoming
been
more
a crash
interested.
before that, in a big one, until sort of the 1929, unless you look at the 70s crash.
There's a slow crash.
Yeah. I mean, I was not really involved in the stock market in the 73, 74 deal, which was quite a crash. That was another big one. But I was not involved in that. I'm a bit too young for that. But
I just meant the zeitgeist. But what was the kind of sentiment at that time? Why the 87 crash was so big was because there was such a huge run up before. There was so much liquidity, and then it just all ended as quickly.
But I wasn't paying as much attention back then. That was the Gordon Gekko greed is good type era. Very Bonfire of the Vanities and that sort of thing. And then by the 90s, I started we were doing very well, and I started paying more attention. And I remember working in the 90s, and I'd have TV on the next, on the side with CNBC on back then. So it's which causes brain damage. I have to warn people, especially nowadays. It's gotten so much worse over the last 30 years. CNBC used to just like report business news and stuff, but now it's like MSNBC with stock tickers. But so during the 90s, and then I figuratively ran into Bill Fleckenstein, who got me, not only was I more aware of the markets, but also the Federal Reserve's role and everything. And so, that's kind of my focus now is the Fed, because I think most people have no idea of the role the Fed plays in the wealth inequality in this country, and a lot of the
or central banks more generally.
Yeah, central banks more. Yeah, you guys are British, so you have the same issues in many ways. Although the Fed seems to take the lead. So then and then I was fully, I was fully paying attention during the dot-com bubble, and I'm walking around going, "This is insane," And then I'm buying REITs and things like that, which were dirt cheap, and then the Nasdaq doubles from there. So I had people that didn't know what a stock was a few months before telling me, hey, I just bought this pets.com and it went up and I made money. And so I knew that was going to end, but I'm always early. So I was buying REITs and watching and paying down bills and stuff and totally watched the .com collapse. And I know people who bought at the top and sold at the bottom and got killed. In fact, a lot of my friends got seriously damaged by that 2000 to 2003 debacle. And so and I wasn't a part of it, other than I did make one very small, stupid investment in a Munder NetNet fund in like March 2000. I think I called the top because I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've been wrong for a couple of years here. I mean, I know this is insane, but maybe it's going to get more insane. And so I bought like a little bit of that fund, and that was like the peak. So I probably lost half of that, but it was like I said, a small amount.
But you're in good company, because I'm trying to think. It was Julian Robertson that blew himself up over basically a horribly mistimed. I think, if I remember correctly, early skepticism, and then right at the top of the market, he
switched.
We returned, reverse gears and went all in, and then it just went spectacularly wrong.
And what was also interesting about the beginning of the .com, or the end of that boom, was that what people forget now is we got fast broadband, or relatively fast broadband. Back then it was dial-up, where it would take ages.
Modems,
yes. Yeah. And so all these people...
2400 baud, yeah, I remember, yeah.
They try, yeah. You used to, exactly. Yeah. You got your AOL account, and you were like, oh, where am I now? Oh, I'm in this city in America, so what's the local number? And then connecting in the hotel. Bloody hell.
Yeah.
But the main point was that you also
pornography took a long time to download.
It did. It really did. I mean, forget videos. It was pictures back then.
Still photos.
Yeah.
Of animals.
Well,
sorry, I've said too much.
No, I'll edit that.
No, I said too much. Just to finish up, and then during the 2000s, I was paying extremely close attention and to the markets every day. And I saw this again. I saw the housing bubble coming. I mean, again, a few years early. I was looking at foreclosures in California in like 2005. And I'm looking at all the banks involved, and it's like Deutsche Bank and Credit Suisse and all these other banks, and I'm like, what are these banks doing in these crappy mortgages? And this is So again, I was early. I got very bearish, and of course, as I told someone the other day, my problem in 2008 was I wasn't bearish enough. But so I saw that. I mean, I saw that coming. I didn't really profit off it. I mean, I did have some shorts. Indy Mac and Downey Savings were my two. But I preserved my wealth during that time. I didn't get rich during my time like some of these guys did, because I didn't have the sophistication of doing what the big short guys did or something. And then 2008 just like totally radicalized me how that was handled, because I could not believe that they let the bad guys get away with it. And so that kind of put me on the path that I've been ever since. Although the Iraq War was another big thing too. You mentioned that's about it. I think some people are surprised like that. I know that like when my first podcast was with Grant Williams, and he was like really surprised that I wasn't in the financial business at all. And I've never worked for a law firm, a Wall Street firm or anything like that. But I've read a lot and listened to a lot over the years, and I've soaked in a lot of knowledge, and I've got my scars from trading my own account, which I've been doing for years. And so I just picked it up, naturally, I guess.
I mean, I think that says an awful lot about the so-called credentials of the professional investor class. You mentioned 2008, and the way I look at things since then, because obviously a lot of water has gone under various bridges since then. But the way I look at it as an investment person who's been employed in like Wall Street or the city since I started in the business, is 2008 revealed how corrupt the financial system was. And then subsequent years have revealed that far from being an outlier, Wall Street's actually representative of everything corporate. So big, it's representative. That level of corruption has subsequently been seen in pharmaceuticals, in food, in basically big everything. And that's been the really painful pill to swallow. Would you agree with
100%.
that?
I completely agree with that. Yes. Yeah. It's distressing, but I try to remain cheerful, and that's why I joke so much. And I do have pictures of like Don Quixote in the windmill that I sometimes, because people say, you know, Rudy, it's never going to change. You can't stop it. And I know, but I said, this is my account now. It is for future historians and to amuse me. So
You say that things won't change, but I myself, I have an increasing sense that we are living through something. I would hesitate to use the word biblical, but there's few other adjectives that do the job, that we're literally living through a time of revelation now. That it seems abundantly clear to, I think, so many people that everything's been a sham. We're living in a sort of we've been living in a Potemkin world of supposed wealth and achievement. And the thing that's probably been most meaningful to me over the last few years, in fact, I'd say, as someone who read English at university, one of the most significant things I've ever read in my life is actually a book that I came across quite recently called 180 Degrees. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No. Oh, wait. Yes, I started to read that.
Fergus
and
O'Connor Greenwood is the notional author, but it's a book called 180 Degrees.
Yes.
The subtitle is Unlearn the Lies You've Been Taught to Believe.
Yeah.
And we were lucky enough to have the author on a few years ago. And I don't know if Paul, have you read it yet?
I still haven't, Tim. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Are we still friends?
It's okay. The beatings will continue after the show. But basically, this is the most extraordinary thing one of the most extraordinary things I've ever read. It's 800 odd pages. It's an absolute mammoth book. But basically, if you take the central argument, and I'm open-minded to that central argument, so I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but I'm minded to believe he's broadly correct in most, if not all, of his suggestions. We've been lied to forever about basically everything. It's utterly astonishing.
Yeah. Well, you guys know Tony Deaton, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, Grant did a podcast with him years ago, and I just think it's the single best investing philosophy podcast I've ever heard, and I've quoted from him a number of times. And he's he's not some radical guy, but he's very soberly just says, you want to believe the government numbers, and you want to believe, but then you realize that they're all lying. It's all lying, and it's kind of I don't want to be one of these downer guys, these black pill types, because I'm not. I'm actually very positive, and I'm glad you well. I don't know if you're positive, but we know something's changed. More people are realizing this.
I think every day, thousands and thousands of people are waking up to this.
Yeah. But here's the problem. What are they going to choose as an alternative? And that's scary too. Because, we have the devil we know, and then, things could get worse. Things could also get better. You always have to hedge that things might get better too.
Well, how do you feel about the Trump 2.0? Because I was extremely concerned about the direction of travel. I mean, obviously, Paul and I are here based in London, but in the UK. But the direction of travel was looking bad everywhere. And then, against all the odds, seemingly, certainly in relation to the sort of legacy media, which clearly can't be trusted, was saying, it's going to be a shoo-in for the Democrats. And then Trump 2.0 happens, and it's like that made me feel a lot more upbeat about the future.
Well,
maybe naively so.
No, the way I put it is, I think the Biden administration was a disaster, and I think Kamala would have been horrible. So as I put it, I'm not sad that she lost at all, but I'm suspicious of Donald Trump. Let's put it that way. And the people he surrounds him with, who always seem, his entire life to be very scammy, corrupt.
Well, developments like Trump coin don't bless the administration with credibility and reverence.
Yeah, Marvin Barth, he was just on with Grant. They did a podcast, and I thought it was excellent. They talk about that. Grant has a great some comments on that. It's just the whole, and a lot of other people, even people that are like, right, conservative, right wing, are very upset by the just the blatant grifting. This Trump coin, Melania coin. I mean, I don't know. These guys have no shame, and I it's and I say this as someone who has completely spoke out against the corruption of the Clinton and Bush and Obama and Biden administration. So I try to be completely nonpartisan, bipartisan. I loathe both parties, as I put it. So yeah, that's distressing about Trump. It really is, because the other thing is when he does, Andrew Napolitano is a very conservative judge, and he made comments about Trump, basically trying to override the judicial system. And he says, the judicial system is there to protect people from the other two branches. And if I think it was Grant that brought up other people have too, the precedent of some of the things Trump's doing. It's just, you're going to get a president someday that you really don't like. So all the Trump supporters now that are like thrilled with anything he does, we're gonna fly, everyone living in New York to what's today, Libya, wherever they're flying people, all this stuff. El Salvador,
Alcatraz.
The Trump guys are going, yeah, they deserve it, but you know what? So maybe you get Gavin Newsom as your next president. Thank God help us.
Be careful what you wish for.
Oh God, yeah. So I said the same thing back in the 90s when or in the 2000s when Bush and Cheney were trashing the Constitution, especially after 9/11 and then of course the Iraq debacle and the Afghanistan debacle. But I said, and the executive was taking a lot of power back then, especially Cheney, who basically ran the show. And I was telling conservatives, Republicans, this is not good. All this Patriot Act, all these, we're giving up our freedoms. You're not going to get them back, and you're going to get a president someday that you don't like, and he's going to use those against people you do like. That's the thing. The Bill of Rights, I've said, is like, it's really what Americans have that no one else has. I mean, at its core is the Bill of Rights, the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, Second Amendment, freedom to keep arms. And so many people in the last, 10, 20 years just seem so quick, especially during the COVID era, to give up their civil rights. And that's just scary to me. And so that's why I wonder, in this period we're in now, where you, as you say, and it's true, more people are realizing that this whole thing is just a scam to enrich, to shovel wealth upwards, I think. But what are they going to, are these people going to choose, a demagogue, and some think Trump's a demagogue, but I mean, in some ways he is this, what is fascism? I mean, I look at fascism as partnership between big business and big government. And I don't think it started with Trump. I mean, I've been railing about that since especially 2008. I mean, to me, that was fascism. What happened there was a coup. I've called the 2008, 2009 period a coup, and it's not a governmental coup. It was basically a coup of the oligarchs, the people, the Hank Paulsons and of the world. So, who basically ran the country at the time, of the crisis. And then Obama came in, and he talked a good game, and then he was the plutocrat's best friend, and now he's fabulously wealthy, just like all of them. They're all fabulous. Bernanke, I hear, makes $20 million a year. Yellen's now at PIMCO. These guys are. Clinton's cashed in hundreds of millions, and Obama has done. And of course the Bush family was very well off to begin with. I mean, these people all have just massively enriched themselves. The Bidens, geez, how much are they worth? You
look at photos of Janet Yellen, and she looks perpetually like someone who's suddenly realized she's left the gas on.
She's such a joke. I don't know. She's gone now. Well, no, she's been at the Fed off and on since 1977, so she's never gone. She's like, these people don't go away with their money. They got to come back. I mean, she's still interviewed. They're interviewing her every day. Somebody. And why? I think her tenure at the Fed and as Treasury Secretary were disasters for America. And but that's who they interview. People fail up,
You talk
Larry
about,
Summers. Larry Summers is being interviewed every single day.
You talk about sort of being positive about things, and one thing I'd say is an unashamed positive is the fact that we now have alternative media.
Yes.
We have Substack, we have Twitter or X, we have the Twitter point, whatever you call it, under Musk, but it's improved from the last iterations. And it may only be like whistling past a graveyard, but nevertheless, there are still people out there trying to speak truth to power.
Well, it's remarkable that somebody like me has been able to get in touch with people that I was, following 30 years ago, or people like you guys, or and some legends of finance. I mean, Jim Grant sent me an email one time, so there. I mean,
It doesn't get any better than that.
No, I mean, he's like, to me, he's the most one of the greatest financial historian alive, as far as I'm concerned, and he's got a great sense of humor, and he's also very leery of Trump. If you listen to his recent stuff, I don't think he's a fan of tariffs. But yeah, Jim's a smart guy. But I mean, Grant Williams, and I'm talking to, I can't name them because I'll forget way too many people. But the list of people who follow me is humbling, and the list of people who blocked me is like a badge of honor. I swear, I'm blocked by some of the worst financial war criminals around. So it's been fulfilling, But yeah, and I'm a cheerful guy. I'm positive. I know a lot of young people who are great people, way better than this geriatric version that's been running the country the last 20 years. So hopefully they will see the error of their parents' ways, and they will try a different system. But we've left such a mess for them that I feel bad for them,
So with regard to Trump, do you think that they have the expression that you get the wife you deserve? Has America got the president it deserves? And I mean that in a kind of aspirational way, that everything that America kind of stands for in terms of making money, more, and which has actually made it the powerhouse that it is, has actually just gone too far. And now it's permeated every part of society, media, everywhere. And then you've got this pinnacle of him getting in and then thinking pretty much that he's kind of God.
Yeah, I think Marvin Barth probably explains it better than me, but I think he's basically saying, like, the system we've got is broken. It's gone. So things are going to change whether it was Trump leading the charge or not.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to disrupt 40 years of, or whatever, of just policies and things that are bad for most people, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be painless. And could a nice, polite guy, I mean, could he even get elected now president? You need $1 billion. You need to be, can you get $1 billion and still be honest? I don't know. But Trump, he's a bull in the china shop. And that's probably what we need right now, because the status quo is broken and wasn't working. And I don't think people, as you said, the mainstream media is completely worthless. It's just a propaganda. And I mean that on all sides, whether it's Fox or MSNBC, it's worthless. I mean, I see Wall Street Journal articles with Greg Yip before the election saying, the economy's great. It's the people that are wrong. I mean, that's literally the headline, and of course I post all these, but the contempt they have for us. Another thing Bart talks about is Europe. And he says, Europe's way of dealing with the same problems America has is to put them in a closet and pretend they don't exist. Look at Germany, what they're trying to do, the AFD. Now, you may not like the AFD, but you know what? People are sick of the status quo, and in Germany, just as in America.
There's some really dangerous encroachment on free speech. I remember there's a line from, I think it's Voltaire, who said, I may not agree with you, but I'll defend to the death your right to express what you believe.
Absolutely.
And that's gone out the window. And that went out the window a long time ago in Europe. And unfortunately, it went out the window a long time ago in the UK as well.
This is why the Bill of Rights is so important.
We have
in America.
We have something in the UK which I support highly, is the Free Speech Union, and what they do. They stand up for the rights for people to say what is legally their right to do, because they've
come out of nowhere over the last, say, 5 years or so.
Yeah,
good for them.
Yeah, and it's a growing organization that some of the cases that they've dealt with, you would believe, because you're smart, but many people would just have no idea that's going on.
I think the most objectionable one I've come across so far, but there's legion examples, is people basically being stopped, and I think in some cases arrested by the police for praying silently.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
it's
outside
just,
abortion clinics.
yeah, it's just phenomenal, and it's a misunderstanding. Actually, the law is pretty clear, as we've seen now in the UK, where the law says, a woman is a biological woman and a man is a biological man, and you may have sort of definitions of what you want to call yourselves, and good luck to you, but when it comes to the law's the law.
Well, that's why I was talking about Napolitano's comments about the judiciary, which I tweeted out. I mean, we can't. Trump has attacked the judicial branch pretty, to a greater degree than I would like. I don't agree with a lot of judicial decisions, but it is another branch of government, unlike the Federal Reserve, for example. But I just reposted today a video of England. Of cases, exactly what you were talking about free speech, people being arrested because they made a post that caused someone anxiety. Okay, this kind of insanity.
Yeah.
This is why America is unique in the Bill of Rights, as far as I know. We would not, those kind of things. Now, there's states like Washington State, I think here passed some crazy law, has passed some crazy anti-free speech laws, but generally, after time, they get to the Supreme Court and they get struck down because the First Amendment is pretty clear. And it's a great thing. I mean, I like the Salman Rushdie quote. Remember, he was going to be killed for something he wrote by radical Muslims. Free speech is the whole thing, the whole ball game. Free speech is life itself, and I agree with that. You have to defend speech, even when you don't like it, and
Exactly.
and that's hard for a lot of people to do. It's not hard for me to do. I see opinions that I am completely against all the time, but I don't want those people banned. I think so many people are immature about their beliefs and their either their faith or their political beliefs, and so they go nuts when somebody criticizes it or says something mean to them. They're insecure people is basically the way I look at it.
That's exactly the point. The crazy thing about the sort of the ultra left wing or just the left wing is that because their arguments can't hold up in a debate, they demand that the opposition is basically cancelled before you even get to the debate stage of proceedings.
Right, and I'm inalterably opposed to that sort of behavior. And the First Amendment in America protects us from that. Now, you may get arrested by some locality or the state, but like I said, it may take a long time. I mean, the ACLU used to defend in America free speech, but they've gone off the reservation. They got radical. I mean, they don't do that much anymore. They're not free speech. But yeah, free speech is free speech, and I posted one time, as a joke, my right, your right to free speech ends at my pathetic insecurity. You know what I mean? Because and that's how I feel about it. Now, death threats, I'm going to kill Tim, Tim tomorrow, or that kind of thing is illegal. America, fortunately, has much looser, I think, libel laws in the United States if you're a public figure, especially. If you're a private citizen and I say, Joe Smith at this address, is a blah, 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 yeah, I can be sued for that. But if I say, I think Joe Biden is one of the most corrupt administrations we've had, or Trump, I don't have to prove that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Although I have to say, from the very beginning here, because I was going up, years ago, 2013, when I came on Twitter, I'd have a number of prominent FinTwit guys who are, Fed fanboys, and they'd come after me, because they didn't like what I was saying because it didn't fit the narrative. And I always had backup. I always had the links to what I was, defending my position. And I wasn't just spouting off, hey, the Fed's trash, blah, blah, blah. I would say this policy by the Fed is terrible, and then have a link to why. Now, unfortunately, on the new Twitter, if you put links in your posts, you get downvoted, you get hidden.
It's really
and that's, the other day I said, I think in many ways this is worse under Elon. Because, I mean, the spam bots have gone nuts. There's all these, frankly, Elon Musk fanboy accounts with 2 million followers that get promoted over the top, and I know how they do it. And I know how it works. And it was actually suggested to me one time by one of these guys that's got these, they're just trying to get the monthly revenue from for them it's a money thing, and for me it's
Mm.
it's not a money thing. But I know how it works. They all it's just a big club, another big club has that George Carlin line I always like to use. But free speech, man, that was Voltaire, I think, it was the original. But I have a variation of that called I call millennial Voltaire, or actually maybe it's the boomer Voltaire who says, I will defend your right to speak even if I disagree with it, or unless I disagree with you. I mean, it's like they just it's so absurd.
Conditional Voltaire.
A conditional Voltaire, as long as you agree. And that's a problem it's always existed, but it's exploded in the last, Trump era, where if I find out that I disagree with you on I have a list of 10 issues. If you disagree with me on 2 of those, you're dead to me, and I can't relate to that at all, because I learned many years ago, as I like to say, I'd be arguing with some guy on something, not even politics, on anything. And they go, screw it, let's go have a beer. I'm able to do that.
But I think that's the problem with the social media, which is it's completely impersonal. It's completely depersonalized. So you figure that if you can't actually see the person who you're having a joust with, you can say basically anything and get away with it.
Well, yeah. And I always, as I put it, I always try to punch up, once in a blue moon, I'll quote tweet somebody. Like the other day, someone called me a moron out of the blue, and I may be one, but you don't know. You just showed up here. You got. I like people that see one tweet out of, as I put it, 8 million, and then they come out swinging, and because I've tried to be very balanced, I think I have followers who are supporters of Biden and Trump, and or neither, probably mostly. And I'm, getting back to Trump, I've been critical of Trump on some recent podcasts, and people are like, oh, you hate you. One guy said I have TDS, and I'm like, you got to be effing kidding me. It's absurd.
He said you're what?
Go back.
Trump derangement syndrome.
Trump's derangement syndrome. Go back to my posts. I mean, back in 2016, I've been around this game for a long time, and I've been paying attention to politics my whole life. And so I do think, as Paul said, he's done some great things. I mean, the border situation was untenable. It was just shocking. It's almost as if they were trying to destroy the United States. And so he fixed
hold that thought, and then extrapolate to the rest of the West.
Yeah.
It's almost as if they're trying to destroy the.
Yeah, it seems culture. Intentional. At least it did. All I'm saying about Trump is I wish, and I said this 8 years ago too. First of all, he surrounds himself with, I think, a lot of bad people. And he's, of course, so did Biden, but and probably every president. But I mean, overtly bad people, grifty people. And the other thing is just his going out of his way to just insult people, which I think is kind of unnecessary. And I think it turns off a lot of middle of the road type voters, which I consider myself to be a moderate, and it's unnecessary. I mean, I guess for him, it's a tactic that he's probably, he's used his entire life. Everybody now has read Art of the Deal and all that. So it seems like he oftentimes has to have a win-win agreement instead of a win-lose agreement. We're like, yeah, Tim, I'll do this deal with you, but I have to make sure that I'm screwing you somehow on the deal, and you get, I get more than you. And I guess that's, I guess that's good for your president to be doing that, to get America the better deal, but it's not good for everybody else, and everybody else isn't stupid either. So.
But it does a lot of politics, the playground.
What about the long term as well? I mean, you might get a good deal, or you may get a good deal on the tariff situation in the short term, but people are going to start working around you. They ain't going to trust you, and they're not going to want to buy your bonds, and they're going to start to sell the dollar.
Well,
and all of that goes on. It's like, and the markets can deal with uncertainty. Well, actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. The markets can deal with bad news. The markets can't deal with uncertainty. They hate uncertainty. And with him, we now see that there's this level of uncertainty, because even though he talked about the tariffs, I didn't think he'd bring them in the way that he's brought them in this almost childish way of, you're raising them, I'm raising them, you're raising them, I'm raising them. This is without, like it's some kind of poker game. Dangerous. It's really dangerous.
Well, in my Substack lately, I've been quoting a variety of people who are talking just about what you're saying, that not only that it looks like there's no plan, but one or two people are saying, well, this is the plan, so I don't know. Everybody talks. I used to
Yeah.
joke. It's 3D chess, 4D chess. I know. So
I don't know. I've heard people say that, and I've heard them quote The Art of the Deal, which I haven't read. So I'm interested in your take on that and what's in there. But if I could just say,
I posted a Bannon clip the other day. That's an older clip. He's with Ezra Klein, but Bannon's going, this is how we operate. We're going to go in there. I think this dates back this may date back to Trump 1. We're going to go in there and we're going to throw, or maybe it's Trump 2, but anyway, it's Bannon explaining the Trump. We're going to hit them with 4 things every day. And the news media, because
flood the zone.
Yeah, flood the zone. And he goes, and the news media, because they're stupid, but that's Bannon, says they're going to focus on one thing, or they're going to running off over here. And meanwhile, we get our stuff done. So, it's like people saying the Art of the Deal. He goes, he's going into a meeting, he walks in, throws a grenade in the room and walks out, and then walks back in, and then starts negotiating. So I think some of this must be almost tongue in cheek. We'll see how it, I have no control over it, and we'll see how it works out. But the point is, the status quo has not been working. Okay. So someone has to throw a grenade. And by the way, and hopefully the grain just gets the right people. That's my concern. By the way, everyone who said, when the tariffs came out, everybody suddenly was a bond expert and a currency expert.
Yeah, but Ukraine showed us how many armchair experts there are in drone warfare and
yeah. Oh yeah, just look at David Frum. He's been an armchair warmonger his whole life. What was I going to say? Everyone's like, oh, the dollar's going down. Dollar's going to, that's the end of the dollar, which I've been hearing for 50 years. It's the end of the dollar, and someday there will be the end of the dollar, as Brent Johnson likes to say, but it's not today. And then I'm like, you know what? If you're worried about the dollar losing its reserve currency status, where were you when we seized, $350 billion worth of Russian treasuries?
But I would argue that was actually the bigger deal of anything that's happened recently. It's far bigger than the tariff situation.
That sent a message.
At a stroke, it's led every aligned and unaligned country to the US to reconsider whether it wants to own US dollars and US Treasury bonds as reserve assets.
Yeah. Besides the Bill of Rights, the other thing we got going for us is rule of law. And if you just upend rule of law, which happened in 0809, also happened in 2020, but to the degree that we did sovereignly with confiscating Russia's funds, you don't think Saudi Arabia is looking at that? You don't think China's looking at that? You don't think India is looking at that? I mean, I don't know how many treasuries they own. Japan is supposedly considering going to sell treasuries.
Some breaking news. So we're recording this 5 p.m. ish on Thursday, the 8th of May. White smoke is emerging from the Vatican. We have to ask Rudy, are you the new Pope?
No, but it's funny. Let me tell you, I had a best friend growing up, and his grandmother, and this guy was like a John Belushi type. So his grandmother would pray every day. She told him that he was going to be Pope. And so he's no longer with us. So he never made Pope, but no, I'm not the Pope.
That's exactly what you would say, isn't it?
Yes. Well, you know what? I told him, look, if you ever do get to be Pope, I want some cushy job in the Vatican, with my own little estate and a ton of money and all that. He promised me, but I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, no, that's good. I didn't know that. I just, I'm doing a podcast.
Have you seen Conclave?
Yes.
Have you seen the film Conclave?
No.
I have, Tim. Yeah, it's very good. I thought it was
the point is it's about the election of the Pope. So I don't know who they bribed to get this into the mainstream news, but they've done a very good job.
It was very good. I thought it was very good.
It's a cracking film.
I put out a tweet today with a picture of the Vatican with black smoke coming out, and the headline was, Federal Reserve releases black smoke to indicate, continuation of uncertainty, because some guy made a joke yesterday during the press conference as everyone's waiting, and CNBC has the countdown clock to the Fed. And the guy made a great joke and said, hey, this is like waiting for the smoke, from the Vatican. That's how reporters treat the Fed. They treat it like it's some sort of
holy writ.
As I said, people in Congress, they don't even know that Congress created the Fed. They think that it's some coven of witches that live in the sky. They're so it's all screwed up, as I like to say, to the Fed is Congress's drug dealer.
So Rudy, I got to ask you this question: if you were in charge, what would you do? How would you fix?
What do you mean if Rudy was in charge?
I like to say I'm not dictator yet, and then I say yet. Okay, here that's I'm better at questions than answers, but I've answered this before. I think the first thing that pops in my head in America is I would end too big to fail and too big to jail. I think that's been, look, I just the other day there was a big bank was a Credit Suisse, and they got fined $500 million for misconduct, which is basically money laundering. And that's been ever since
they can print that out of thin air in an afternoon.
Exactly.
So who cares?
That's ever since Eric Holder, who was a Wall Street lawyer, who went back to Wall Street, being a Wall Street lawyer when he was done. It's too big to fail and too big to jail. And basically, were the two policies we had under the Bush-Obama administration. I used to just combine the two names. I would change that. I mean, if you're money laundering and you're money laundering $1 million, I mean, I know of actually a friend of a friend who actually imprisoned for money laundering. And
but they only go after the little guys.
Exactly.
We're always the guys that take it.
Exactly. And above a certain level in this country of net worth, apparently, or connections, you are not criminally prosecuted. I mean, why is look at JP Morgan's got 5 felony convictions, at least at last count. And yet it's like when these banks, when they commit money laundering, or in JP Morgan's case, look into their 15-year Epstein connection. It's always the shareholders and the brick and mortar of the bank that commit the crimes, because the shareholders pay the fine. It's never the people who did it. No one is criminally prosecuted, and that extends all across. I mean, no one was in 2008. No one for Credit Suisse the other day, $500 million. I mean, there's a website that keeps track of. I don't know the name offhand right now, but I posted it before. That lists all the bank fines that they've paid over the years, and you're talking in the billions. To 20, 30 billion. Some of these banks. And basically, that's how they operate now. Is it's a cost of doing business, and no individuals are ever held accountable. And it's not just for criminal acts. If you, like I was pointing out before, in 2019, 2020, the Fed changed their policy to seek higher inflation for an extended period of time. I mean, I've posted many quotes of Jay Powell and others talking about it. That has materially and permanently harmed hundreds of millions of Americans, and God knows how many abroad, through the ramifications of their inflation, which went to 9%. Although even Larry Summers said it, if you used the old calculations, it would have been 18. That's a financial war crime in my mind, and there's no accountability for it. In the media, Bernanke, Yellen, all these people are held out as saviors. And it's the opposite. They've done nothing but enrich a small percentage of the population while making life much worse for the vast majority, I believe.
I think a big part of the problem is that people, even in finance, aren't aware of exactly how the monetary system works. But
100%.
The big question for me is: will it ever be possible to effectively remove central banks from the equation? Because that, for me, is the only way we can get to something returning to like akin to sound money.
Yeah, well, I have
stop the money printers from being in charge of the printing press. Yeah,
I have an extensive and the Fed collection, of photos. But as I say, I'm not delusional. I don't expect the Fed to end, but they certainly could put a leash on it. I mean, their mission creep is ridiculous. Kevin Warsh had a great speech out the other day on that, which I posted again. They shouldn't. They're as I put it, they can process checks and give tours to school children, and then replace the FOMC with the 2-year yield. And then, if the world comes to an end, they can backstop depositors and insure depositors in banks and let big boys fail. We've already proved that there's no limit to the money printing. I mean, I got a great Kashkari clip of that. There's no limit, so fine. Let's just, instead of backstopping Ken Griffin and Larry Fink, let's let them. I mean, they're smart guys. They're big boys. If they make bad bets, let's protect the bank depositor. With 25 grand in Omaha.
How concerned are you about the introduction of central bank digital currency?
Oh, that's game over for everybody. That would be if they ban cash at the same time, 100%. Because they will use it not only for surveillance, obviously, but they will use it for control. No, Mr. Price, it says you can't buy that book. You've
already had your meat allocation for this year.
Yeah,
so
yeah, or you can't buy that meat. Or you know what? You're in I joked the other day about self-driving. Hey, your self-driving car is not going to start today because you tweeted something out that was inappropriate.
Well, that reminds me of Black Mirror, which is
yes. I just started watching that. I never saw it. Yeah, it was very interesting. I love the first episode. Do you remember with the British Prime Minister?
Yeah. How far have you got?
Is that the pig fucking sequence?
Oh, thanks.
Yes. I'm on.
For anyone that hasn't seen it yet.
Oh yeah. You just spoiler. I just that was very intriguing actually. I'm on like episode 3 of season 1, so it just started. But, I like it so far.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things, and they're so varied but also brilliant.
Is it all different directors or something? I haven't checked.
Some of the directors are different, but it's all written by Charlie Brooker. They're all
same guys, right?
Same guy.
Oh wow,
that's a bit like the what is it? What was the sci-fi from the 60s, 50s and 60s? Twilight Zone.
Oh yeah,
yeah. The guy who did Twilight Zone wrote like Rod Serling did nearly all of those.
Yeah, I used to watch
and Charlie Brooker is definitely the Rod Serling de nos jours.
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive because the stories, as you said, are quite different.
And if you jump to you can jump around them because they're all separate,
self-contained.
Right? Yeah. And in the latest one, the second one I thought was very good. What was it called? I'll look it up while we're chatting. But it was actually going to be my media pick. But some of the episodes are just like from a few years ago that were ahead of their time.
And I like documentaries.
Yeah, you kind of look at it and go, oh yeah, well, of course we got that technology. And it's like, no, we didn't have that at the time. This is the foresight that he had. But I think he's been quoted as saying that he's going to be writing a lot more because I was worried about, him running out of ideas. But he's saying in this day and age, there's just so much he can do. Yeah. There is the second one I really like, Bête Noire. I like all of them pretty much, apart from the third one. The third, Hotel Reverie in the late season 7. I didn't really like that one very much. I liked the idea, I thought it was good.
Charlie Brooker, raise your game.
But Eulogy, if you watch that and don't bawl your eyes out,
which one?
Eulogy, which is the 5th one in season 7.
Oh, okay. Have not get to that. Have not gotten to that
that's
one.
Good. But Bête Noire, I really like the idea of that one in the 7th season. But they're all good. They're all good. Just, you'll get through them. I'm actually sort of jealous that you're there at the beginning, able to watch them all,
It's the mark of great art is that you feel jealous that you can't experience it through somebody else's eyes for the first time.
Maybe that's a Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. We should send it to Charlie Brooker.
Well, I think they've already done it with Men in Black, that you have a device that just like wipes your memory and then you start it all over again. Wipe the slate.
Yeah. So I going back to the kind of corruption. It's very interesting, Rudy, that you take it from the point of view that it's kind of the Fed and the inflation argument that's causing the destruction or the eventual destruction of the system. There's a couple of things I wanted to ask about that. First of all, do you, as Tim does, look at the Austrian School of Economics as a discipline? And secondly, do you think that perhaps companies and the way that CEOs are remunerated for their getting the share price up this quarter, it has also contributed to companies taking excessive risks in order to get ahead, and therefore it's okay when everything's going up, but when things start to go down, it causes massive issues?
Oh yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I use anything as a discipline. I mean, if people follow me, I'm kind of all over the map, but I've used Austrian economics certainly as a major influence, and a lot of the people that I respect and have followed for many years would call themselves Austrian economists. I think I just intuitively am drawn to that school because it makes sense to me, whereas the neo-Keynesian stuff just seems insane. and in my mind, has proven to be, if you're not Larry Fink or Ken Griffin, or Bill Ackman or whoever. As far as executive compensation, I mean, I have posts from, again, I've been here 12 years on Twitter, and before that, tons of emails with friends. I've railed against that forever. It's gotten insane. And I think most public companies basically exist to enrich their top executives. And the only company I will put significant amount of money in is one where I feel like the executives won't ever intentionally screw the minority shareholders. And I've only found, well, basically one that I really trust. I have a few other stocks that I've had for years, but I don't necessarily support their management. But I'm just saying that's rare. And so I've railed against that. There's a great book by Chris Leonard called, The Lords of Easy Money, which was written a few years back, which I would highly recommend. Although it's not my pick.
Have you heard of it,
but
Tim?
I don't know that one. No.
Oh, you, and this guy,
this
guy. Okay, it's not a perfect book, but the guy is just like a basic business reporter who actually seems to understand the grift of the Fed, and it's a fantastic. You would like it. I mean, there's spots in there, that you may disagree with, but there's other parts where he just nails it. And one of them is he relates an anecdote of the CEO of Texas Instruments. Had talked to Dick Fisher, who was the Dallas Fed chair. And so they're having a Fed meeting, or these are in the minutes, I guess. And Dick Fisher goes, Mr. Bernanke, or Chair Bernanke, I was talking to the CEO of Texas Instruments the other day, and he says that he's not going to use these low rates to add any plants or equipment or to hire any employees. He's going to use them to borrow a bunch of money and buy back stock, and which I'm sure almost every public company was doing, because they have to offset the option dilution that goes to the executives. And Bernanke's response was just perfect. It's perfect Bernanke. He says, Mr. Fisher, thank you for the anecdote, but we don't want private sector people involved in our decision making because they don't understand economics like we do. I mean, that's the gist of the quote, and there's a number of quotes like that in there.
And I think you'll know another one along the same lines, which is, this is the best Fed governor ever, but does he know economics like we do?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big self-worship. It's a club everyone wants,
The circle jerk society.
They want to be approved by other members. I mean, Ben Hunt's got a great quote on that. It's just an inside. They're in a cloistered world. They really are, almost like I was saying, like the Vatican. They don't. Do you think Bernanke has any?
Warren Buffett has been elected as the new pope. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't surprise me. He's being deified, and he's certainly an amazing accomplishments, but. I had my own criticisms of him and Munger over the years, but what does that matter? He's a billionaire, so
you can't really fault the achievement. And the thing I'd say about both of them, especially perhaps Munger, is whatever they've done in investment terms, which is extremely impressive. I'd say that's actually dwarfed by the public good they've done by making public through writing exactly how they've done it.
I
think they've done so much educational service to people. As individual investors, that's impressive.
Right. But the problem with Munger in his later years, and I have his coffee table book or whatever,
It's that Poor Charlie's Almanac.
Yeah, Poor Charlie's Almanac. And it's fantastic. He's obviously a genius. And he made some comments, like he was very pro-China, very pro-authoritarianism, I thought. He's made some, over the years. And that kind of bothered me because, I want everybody to be perfect, like me. Which I'm not at all. I'm far from it. But the thing that bothered me about Buffett and Munger, particularly in 2008 and 2020, is that they did not, like every other billionaire, they did not speak out against what I think they clearly must have known was always going to do was enrich them. I mean, Druckenmiller at least was good about it. He said a few years back, he goes, the single biggest factor in the growth of wealth inequality is QE. It's not even debatable. That's from Stan Druckenmiller. It's very rare that you get a billionaire who
is humble,
says, you know what, this is good for me, but it's not good for the vast majority of people. And Buffett, I think, knew that, and he never said it. And I know he has his own explanation for why, but like he could have been a leader in '08. He could have been a leader in 2020 and said, hey, some of these, gifts were given, the Fed's giving to, these secret bailouts and everything. It's not good, but he didn't. And
well, I seem to remember there was an op-ed that he wrote or like an open letter he wrote, like, "Dear Uncle Sam, thank you for brackets bailing me out."
Yeah.
So
well, he's aware of it.
Whenever the rubber hits the road, he sort of wraps himself in the flag. But there's been occasions where he has spoken with forked tongue, like with his, well, what is this gold stuff? And he sort of draws a gloss over the fact that he's tried to corner the silver market himself.
Yeah, he's a flawed genius and obviously an investment genius, and he was just born sort of a savant, for this sort of behavior. As he put it years ago, if he'd been born in Africa or something and had to, hunt his own food,
his life couldn't have happened.
Yeah, you would never have heard of him. So he grew up in,
right place,
Omaha,
right time.
In Omaha in 20s and or 30 or whatever, and he did very well. He was in the right place at the right time. Well, I don't expect we'll see someone like him again. And part of that is because their probity, or is that a good word? They're very serious. I mean, look at them. They got $350 billion. At most companies, a CEO with $350 billion cash would be fired. Because they'd say, "Oh, you should be levered up and doing this and that," and I love that they kind of just smile and go, "No, we're going to do what we're going to do."
Well, Morgan Housel makes a very good point in
he's great.
One of his, but he is great. And one of the points he makes is that so much of what we are as investors has to do with basically when we were born and what we lived through. So for anyone that was brought up as Buffett was during the Great Depression, they have a completely different perspective on risk than people who are brought up, let's say, during the go-go years of, let's say, the 90s, or for that matter, the noughties. So, that when you were born has such a massive impact on how you think about investing.
I really think timing is everything in many ways. There was a guy, a CFO I knew in the late 90s, who we were dealing with our 401k plans on the committee, and he would say, "Remember, it's time, not timing." And as I joke, I think that guy lost all his money in 2001. It's because it really is.
He lost it all in a watchmaker as well. That's one of my very poor jokes.
Sorry.
It's tradition.
I'm American. I don't get some English.
No, it's okay. It's tradition on the show that I make a very poor joke, and then there's 5 minutes silence, and then everyone goes, "Oh, well, that was a shame, wasn't it?"
Yeah. I mean, when is your guys' sitcom going to be on? That'll be great. You could follow up Black Mirror.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but I'm a huge fan of British humor, by the way. I mean, I was watching Monty Python as a little kid. I think they're for me, they're kind of one of my role models, and at least as far as comedy, and they were hit or miss too.
I was watching Life of Brian recently, and I'd forgotten just how funny it is.
Right, and even some of the sketches I'm thinking of more. Yeah, the Flying Circus. They still have some of which I posted. The lifeboat sketch and the Undertaker, and
because the TV stuff's a bit hit and miss, but some of the films really were. They really did knock it out of the park.
Yeah, I remember. What was the Holy Grail? That was probably my favorite of theirs.
The Black Knight,
and
was
Fleshwood.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of that humor was probably over my head. I think it's from because some of it is like British centric. I think, and you guys have a little bit different sense of
we have different sarcasm. References. Sarcasm is great, but but we get it straight away. When you were saying something sarcastically, it's funny, but. Yeah.
Well, John Cleese's finest hour is in Fawlty Towers when someone says, I've got a complaint about the view, and he says, "Well, what do you expect? You're in a Torqueto. What do you expect with wildebeest, majestically over the plain,
Right. Well, it's funny because a lot of times I'll tweet, satire, and it's sad how much I think is obvious satire that people believe. And I think
God, yeah.
But that's partly because reality now, I mean, I joked years ago, satire is dead. There's a great quote that said, from, it was like Financial Times or the Washington Post. The headline was the CIA will be is the biggest defense against disinformation. Oh, psyops are the biggest defense against disinformation. And I'm like, I look at that headline and I'm like, oh, what do you know? So I said satire is dead. Now I recognize sometimes people who write the articles don't get to do the headlines. So, but
I've got one from today's Telegraph here in the UK, which is Bill Gates accuses Elon Musk of killing children.
Oh yeah. Well, talk to India about Bill Gates and vaccines years ago. He got kicked out of the country, I think, he's not a good guy. I mean, he knew Epstein for far longer than he admits, and it was far tighter with him. And he's not a good. I don't think he's a good guy, and I don't know why anybody.
Every day, I hope that natural justice does its bit in relation to Mr. Gates.
Yeah, he's a piece of work.
If you get a chance, check out the Twitter account of Titania McGrath, which is
I follow. I follow.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I love reading when people get angry and reply to her. What do you that's always a crack up. And I get that too. Believe me, I get. Actually, not too much. I don't get too much grief. I think, like I said, there was a few larger FinTwit guys that came after me, and they don't come after me anymore because I can put up a pretty good fight myself. So, but I prefer not to fight, So, if somebody doesn't like me and doesn't agree with me, I may answer you and give you my point. But if you don't like me, you won't block. I mean, it really doesn't bother me. I mean, I joke about people blocking me because I think it's funny, And blocking now is totally different than it was, a couple of years ago. When you had to log on, you had to get on a different account or something to see these tweets. Now you can see them. So.
Yeah,
you just can't quote tweet them. So, I'm all for free speech, and if you agree with me, great. If you disagree with me, that's okay. I'm not going to be laying in bed going, "Oh my God, that guy in Albuquerque disagrees with me."
Yeah, but the thing to remember is all life is out there. It's like very often you feel that. How can I put it? That people have the same sort of ideas and respect. And respective views, and have done have a certain level of education than you have. But I kind of learned this fairly early on because I used to teach at the City University in the 90s, and then I kind of opened up to teaching the general public. And what I found was that with any group of like 50 people, you're going to get 2 or 3 who've got or at least one who've got the strangest outlook and see things in a way that you just cannot get your head round. And what we're seeing in kind of real time is when, there's no test that you have to pass in order to open a Twitter account. All life is there. All crazy opinions are there. All crazy, disrespectful people, and a lot of very, very lovely people as well, which is the majority. Yeah. So it's kind of like all life is there. And it's like you never really know what you're dealing with on the other end of a Twitter account. And
it could be a bot.
It could be. And I was about to say, I think for a very long time, we've now got AI that we can use for our own purposes. But I'm pretty sure that these tech companies have been using AI for many years. A lot of the comments have been, stoked up by the fact that people like to argue, and we wouldn't have known that we weren't arguing with a real person, and we still don't really. That's the Turing test, isn't it? So it was passed quite a long time ago. So that is the problem. You may not actually be dealing with a human being, and it's a crazy thing to Black Mirror-ish,
Yeah, I've noticed more like AI responses. Like I'll make a comment, say on the balance sheet, and it'll reply, "Yes, the balance sheet," and it gives this little like canned Chat GPT answer, and sometimes it'll say AI, but I don't know what the point of it is, because I look at it and if I figure it out it's AI, I just block it, like I do with all the bots. But yeah, it's a problem. Well, the way I look at it is, the average IQ is 100, right? So I've
a lot of
been
people
around
with something below that.
So half or whatever, right? Or maybe it's not. Maybe I don't know what the median is, but I'm saying, I've been around my life. Probably the vast majority of people have been, 120, 130, 140, but for my whole life. So if I run into someone that's 100, God bless them. I mean, there, but for the grace of God, go I. But it can be hard. A lot of my jokes, a lot of my tweets are pretty kind of, I like to think, kind of multi-level, kind of sophisticated, and some are complete nonsense, of course. But I don't think a lot of people get that. And I tweeted the other day, I go, I'm not going to dumb down my jokes. They're dumb enough already. So I'll stick with that.
You mentioned China earlier. How do you feel about relations between China and the US? And do you think do you think that the prospect of war is inevitable, or that can be avoided?
Well, I'm very anti unnecessary war, and I don't know. I mean, we gave away the store to China ever since Clinton, and Clinton was talk about corruption, with the Chinese, but he got a lot of donations from the Chinese government, which again I post on that. I don't, China has their sphere of influence. We have ours. I guess we're trying to be Rome and control the entire globe. There's
But clearly under
with that.
Trump, he's trying to sort of roll back some of these obligations for entirely reasonable financial considerations.
Yeah, yeah.
You
No,
can't
there's a lot
afford it. You can't. This is what brought down Rome. Probably it's military expense.
Yeah, I think
imperial overreach.
There's a lot of smart people who think that the ultimate game, this is all about China eventually, and disengaging completely from China, and that may be a good thing. It may be a bad thing. Like I mean, we had a World War II start in the Pacific. We blockaded Japan, and that's one of the reasons. And so I hope it doesn't lead to war. I don't think it needs to lead to war. China historically, they're in their little area, but I mean, they're no threat to somebody in Nebraska. So I hope we don't have an unnecessary war. Now I listen to guys like Louis Gave, who's great, who has a much more benign version, I think, of China than a lot of the hawks. I do think China has taken us for a ride. They've stolen a ton of proprietary
because they don't play by the rules. They don't play by.
They don't play by the rules, and I say I won't buy anything in China. I've said this before. Like I won't buy Alibaba, even if it's cheap, because you don't own anything. Now I understand that I could buy it and then sell it to you tomorrow for $1 more, $100 more. Yeah, so people trade it as long as you trade it knowing that you're not trading anything that you have an actual claim on. I don't think. So I just kind of ignore China. I do listen to a lot of people who on both sides who have various opinions on what Trump's doing and various opinions on China's threat or non-threat. Some people say China's going to collapse, like imminently. Other people are like, China's the biggest threat to us in the world by a mile. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I hear smart people on both sides. I've never taken a deep dive into China. So I can't change anything about the situation myself. So
I mean, my own take on this would be that
on other things.
China may or may not be a problem, but cultural Marxism is really a problem here in the UK.
Oh yeah,
problem in Europe, and I don't know who to ascribe the guilt to that. But I
don't blame.
I would
China
start with the educational system.
Yeah. I mean, look at how nutty our universities have been, and I'm not just talking about recently. I'm talking about for a long time. Fortunately, I think a lot of kids, I mean, I know kids in California, they had to wear a mask to lacrosse practice. Okay. And there would be someone from the school that would show up to make sure they did. Okay. During COVID. Insane. Or they had to, you're an engineering major and you have to sit through a really ridiculous DEI nonsense class, to qualify for graduation. I mean,
and I Rudy says you've said that you're trying to be objective, and that's obviously an admirable aspiration. But when I watch something like Dave Rubin, and if you watch Dave Rubin, the Rubin Report on say YouTube or Rumble or whatever, but what I see of say most Democrat politics, these people seem literally mentally disturbed. They do not seem like normal human beings anymore.
Mm.
The far left seems to have just completely left the reservation.
Yeah, it's in a way that it's just jaw dropping.
It seems that way from the perspective of London, and we know our own government is down the same rabbit hole as well.
Yeah. Well, the DNC, of course, is lost, and they're completely clueless. And I was just thinking, I got a couple people I follow a number of people on the left and the right. But when I say left, I mean I don't mean I follow Chuck Schumer. You know what I mean? I'm talking about people who are very left wing and loathe Chuck Schumer. There's a couple guys I'd recommend called one's David Sirota and one is Matt Stoller. Now, and this goes for guys on the right too, who I also follow, people on the left and right. Do I agree with every single thing they tweet or say or write? No. But I think that they are right on certain issues. And some of the biggest critics of the Democratic Party have been those two guys since the election, particularly. They're brutal. They're as brutal as I am.
So they have some degree of self-reflection.
They do. And there's no introspection, certainly not in the Democratic Party. And this dates back to 2016.
The problem I have with this stuff is that these terms I don't think honestly have much relevance anymore. Left and right don't really mean anything.
Right. I totally agree.
It boils down to, do you believe in the overarching power of the big state, or do you believe in the rights of the individual? And that's the only question you need to answer.
Well, that's Orwell said that. Yeah, it's authoritarians versus libertarians. Back when libertarian also wasn't a corrupted word. Yeah, I think conservative and liberal, I agree, completely useless terms now. Is it liberal to be the party of huge warmongers as the Democratic Party now is?
I mean, that's flipped 180 degrees from what I remember.
It's bizarre. Although there's plenty of Republican warmongers too. But I mean, when the Democrats are like touting Dick Cheney, who I think is,
evil incarnate.
Evil incarnate. Okay, fair enough. No offense to evil. Yeah. I was just shocked. And you got guys like Bill Kristol and David Frum and Max Boot, who went from being, Bush Cheney era bootlickers to Biden era bootlickers, and the Democrats embraced them because they were anti-Trump. I joked years ago, if Trump came out and said, I'm against clubbing baby seals. If he said that, there would soon be someone on NBC talking about the damage this was going to do to the fur trade. You know what I mean? It's surreal. Trump is kind of a unique guy in that he just has pushed people's buttons on the left. A lot of people, not all, because I don't consider myself in this group, but there's people.
But by his enemies shall ye know him.
Yeah, well, yeah, but also, there's people, as I say, there's people who their veins burst out and they start screaming like that famous green lady from right after the 2016 election, screaming because he pushed their buttons. But on the other hand, there's a fair number of people who think that he's sent from God, down here to save the world. And I'm not quite sure of that, but it would, maybe, but so then there's everybody in between. And that's why I'm saying you got to win over everyone who's in between. I think I did the other day that Trump got 78 million votes and Kamala got 76 million votes or whatever. But about 90 million eligible voters didn't even vote. Eligible voters, and so you have a majority, neither Trump nor Kamala would have had a real majority, of the electorate. And that's why I would suggest to Mr. Trump, of course, this is completely pointless, that he stop going out of his way to be a dick, and that he might win over more people that are in that 90 million. Now, it's, his career his time as president he's got 3 more years. So, but he's certainly shaken things up, and things certainly needed to be shaken up. And I'm glad to see that. In a related thing, you're talking about the schools. I think if you teach kids self-esteem, and I don't mean self-esteem like participation awards, I mean like accomplishment, where they're confident and they've accomplished things and they've worked hard from a young age, and you've told them that you love them, but you also expect things from them.
Old style Puritan work ethic type stuff.
Yes. Then they are far, far, far less likely to fall for the nonsense that some idiot professor or some idiot on social media is going to throw at them. And I've seen this personally, and I've seen it in kids' friends and young. I point out that I've seen a number of 20 and 30 somethings who are just remarkable people, far better than me, and far better than a lot of people, in charge. And someday, hopefully, they'll be in charge. But the system is trouble. Going along with what I was talking about, the left and the right, although I agree those terms are largely meaningless now. common ground. Like, there's a great picture I post of Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich. You know, Dennis Kucinich was a congressman. He's a very liberal guy. Ron Paul was basically a real libertarian and was be considered very conservative. Those two, they sponsored legislation together. They're friends. Their Venn diagrams overlap on key issues like Bill of Rights, anti-war, for the individual against authoritarians, largely. Do I agree with either one 100%? No, but that doesn't matter. I like to focus on what I agree with them with. Same thing as with these guys, David Schroeder and Matt Stoller. I like to focus on what I agree with them on. You know, when I tell a story, when I was in college, I subscribed to The Nation, which is an American considered to be very left-wing publication, and the National Review, which was, remember William Buckley, right-wing publication, and for a year. And I read both cover to cover. I only did this for a year. And I would say with each, I agreed completely with a third of them. And then each had another 1/3 where I was like, yeah, okay, I get what you're saying, but no, I disagree. And then there was 1/3 that was batshit crazy, right? So I think more people need to do that. Like, don't just follow all MSNBC hosts or all Fox News hosts. You know what I mean?
Because the truth is complex.
It's well, you at least need to see what your opposition is saying. Now, as you talk about, when I watch Dave Rubin, I never watch Dave Rubin. Believe me, I'm reading constantly. I'm getting so much.
Well, you don't need to. You don't need to.
But I mean, I don't. What I did in 2016 after Trump won, and then instead of any introspection, the Democratic Party went straight to Russia. I said, this is nuts. I'm not going to do this. And I stopped watching all cable TV. And it's been a blessing. I mean, I swear, people sometimes I see, they run into me and they're like, "Oh my God, did you hear about this?" And I'll just smile and go, "Yeah, no, I don't." Yeah, and I'm just like, fine. But that doesn't mean I'm uninformed. I mean, I read enough, and I'm.
But this comes back to the topic that news is basic. News is to the mind what sugar is to the body. It's just poisonous.
You have to have a good filter, and
yes, you do. You do. And that starts by your parents raising you to grow up with common sense, and it is teachable, I think. You can expect there's a difference between, raising your kids matters. I mean, Druckenmiller says he's done very well with his kids in spite of his tremendous wealth. So I hear. So he has a great line that says, people ask me about quality time with children, and I tell them, just spend time with your children is quality time. In other words, just being there.
Yeah.
Just being there. Like I had kids, they'd come home from college or something, be studying. And they were so busy, like on finals or something, we didn't even really interact, but they'd come down, they'd see me, and they knew
you were there.
I was always there. One of the things that, is that I was always there, and so I think that's important. And I think we have lost. You were talking earlier about wealth, this ephemeral wealth, the seeking of it, and more and more and more and more is just gone nuts since the 80s. I think it's far worse now. And that's part of my criticism of Trump. The guy's supposedly a billionaire. What's with all the, Trump coin grifting? I mean, is that to make Trump Jr. a billionaire? I don't know. But it's so unnecessary. And we've really gotten away from the core of what being an American is, your community, your faith or civic mindedness or whatever, a lot of that's kind of gone by the wayside because it's not valued at all anymore. And that's why, like in my last podcast I did with Maggie Lake, I recommended Chris Arnade on Twitter, Arnade, Chris. He's an ex-Wall Street guy. He'd be a great interview for you, I think, because he started years ago after he was kind of disillusioned, I think, after 08, 09, even though he benefited from it, and as he'll admit. And he started walking like through the bad parts of American towns, and talking to people. And he spent a lot of time at McDonald's, and he wrote a book about it, I believe. And he and just started talking to like the people that are never talked to or never talked about, and finding out what their problems were, what their issues were. And now he's doing it over in Europe. Fascinating guy. We follow each other, but we don't really interact. So I don't know him, but I respect what he's trying to do. Mark Faber, he even had a great quote the other day about CNBC, which is totally true. He goes, CNBC and Bloomberg, they never interview anybody who's not, either very wealthy or, as the Upton Sinclair quote relates to, totally tied to Wall Street, or stocks going up. And so they never talk to a middle-class person. There's no middle-class person on a panel on CNBC about what the inflation target should be.
It's just the elites talking to each other.
It's a bunch of 100%.
As a handbrake turn type question, because given what you've just said, coming back to for me, the single biggest problem in the financial world is debt. The amount of debt. Do you think that the debt problem is remediable, or are we going to have some kind of monetary reset to change the balance of things? Because it's clear. I mean, 37 trillion, I think, for the US. We're here in the UK. We're proportionately on the same path as is Europe, as is Japan. This can't last. It can't last forever. Is there a way out of this, or other than currency collapse?
Well, I'm looking up the Ludwig von Mises quote.
There is no escape from the end of a monetary.
I don't know what the exact wording is. I'm trying to find it.
Tim will give it to you.
It's built on the sands of credit creation.
There is no means of avoiding the final collapse of a boom. So yes, and this was back in 2016,
it's a complete.
2015.
I think the payoff is complete and total catastrophe of the currency system.
Yes, yeah. So that's another thing I've been trying to point out lately. I said we have a lot of very wealthy people and a lot of smart people on TV and everywhere, social media and blogs and Substack, saying, there's no way out of this debt. I guess we're just going to have to inflate it away. That's fine. We're going to inflate it away. And I understand, I'm a realist. I understand that's traditionally, that's probably going to be the way it is. Someone said, that's the way it is. That's the way it always has been. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm still going to fight it. But it's...
Well, that said, how do you feel, for example, about, say, gold?
Oh, gold! I love gold. We can talk about. I've always loved gold, just from a sort of intuitive thing. But this is the thing: the people are like, well, we either have to default, or we have high inflation, and I'm like, no, you have to default one way, or you have to default another way. And inflation is nothing more than a very, very regressive stealth default.
It's a tax on everybody.
It's a tax. Even I have a clip of Bernanke talking to Ron Paul. He's saying inflation is a tax. I agree with you, Mr. Paul, and it's too high. And when he said that, the inflation rate was, I think, lower than it is now. It was 2.3 or something.
It's a tax on the lower class and middle class.
Of course it is. They're getting destroyed by higher prices, and I try to speak for them because that's where I came from, and I've benefited from these ridiculous policies that I rant against, the Fed policies and the fiscal policies, but I have a conscience, and so that's why I do it. And I talk against my book every day, I say. But, they're choosing to screw the people. That's why I have a whole thread of quotes from contemporary accounts of the Weimar inflation, where everyone says how it's awful for almost everyone except for the big industrialists, the big capitalists, basically the Bill Ackmans, the Larry Finks, probably the Elon Musks of the time. Stins and that type back then, we're robbed of our savings and Stin's debt goes to zero. I'm butchering that quote, but yeah, it's great if you're a very wealthy, asset heavy, levered up guy. Just like that same people that benefit from the Cantillon effect, which is what ZIRP and QE gave us, So yeah, and as for gold, yeah, it's money. JP Morgan, the original JP Morgan said that, over 100 years ago. It's again, I have this quote. I was thinking the other day, my Twitter account is kind of like a database because, like that JP Morgan quote from 1907, maybe. I have it out there, and I have a link to the source and all that. So sometimes when people are always like, God, how can you look up something from 10 years ago? And it's you just got to remember the keywords, and then I find it. But for me, I use it as a database, sort of, to find old articles or old topics. Because you know what? There's nothing new under the sun.
There's a great line from a film, Lake Placid. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a sort of B-movie film about a big crocodile in a lake, and wherever.
Oh yeah, I'm
But,
familiar.
but it's
I don't think I saw
it's
it,
one of my favorite types of film, as Paul can testify, which is basically sort of comedy horror. And
Yeah.
great, and there's a great Oliver Platt is in it, and he has half the good lines, but it's basically there's a giant crocodile in this lake,
Sure.
and someone was talking about, well, I didn't realize then that crocodiles could swim long distances, and someone, I think it's Oliver Platt, says, yeah, that kind of information is hidden in things called books.
Yeah. Yes.
And there's a
Yeah,
story
so-
of your partner, Tim. I remember you saying from university days when you were going to lectures or something. And
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So basically, my now wife. So I read English and she read history. And we met at Oxford, and I said, I'm just off to the English faculty for a lecture, and she goes, ha! It's a bit like in Groundhog Day when the female lead says, I read French and philosophy, and he goes like, what a waste of time. And anyway, she goes, so where are you going to the faculty? And I said, for an English lecture. She goes, you do realize that since the lecture was invented, they've come across this radical new technology called a book. And I stopped going to lectures after that. I know my place.
Yeah. Well, the problem I have, like with the book 180 Degrees, for example, is I'll read that book, and I'm sure this is what happened, and I'll get like a quarter of the way through, and then some topic will come up, and I'll go, "Oh, I want to learn about. I want to go look at that."
You get distracted.
I swear.
Well, that's because the web is a pure distraction device. That's the problem with the web.
Yeah. Also, I'm able to find a lot of old books online. That archive.org is very good. And so
that's why I read it. That's why I read 100 Degrees for the first time.
Yeah. It's fantastic. But my problem is I read it, I get a quarter of the way through a book, and then I jump to another book, and I jump to another. It's like I have 12 books open. It's kind of like Nassim Taleb has a great story about
it's the inverse library, isn't
unread
it?
books.
It's a library of things that you've never actually read. That has more value than a library of things you have read.
Yes, and that was whose library was that? Was that Echo?
Umberto
Eco?
Eco.
Yeah. So I do a lot of that, and it's I probably do that more than I read a book cover to cover. Because I'm always researching things. And so for a huge variety of topics. So it's everything interests me, unfortunately, just about. So
how did you find?
Like it's a bad thing, but that's not a bad thing at all.
How did you find the book though? So you say you got because you started to talk about it earlier in the show.
Which one?
Said the 180 Degrees. You said you'd started reading.
Well, sometimes I do this too. Sometimes it's kind of like preaching to the converted. Like I say, nothing surprises me. So I think I was reading that book, and if it says I remember, and it's been probably, I don't know, at least months or more. It's like, yeah, I know. It's kind of like, I'm gonna go look up something on UFOs or something. I mean something silly and see. You know what I mean? It's like I don't want to. A lot of times on Twitter when I'm posting something that I am, think other people should be aware of because I think it's a bad thing, I'll go. You know what? I need to post something really stupid right now. Something funny or a funny picture because
cat video.
I don't go that far, but I mean, I try to be a little more sophisticated than that. But it's like
kitten video.
Yeah. Once in a blue moon as a joke, I'll like if I've been on a long rant about something, people are getting sick of being ready to block me. I'll just go, I better stop. And then I'll send a picture. Here's some cute kittens. But that's the comment. Here's some cute. And then, people who know me get the joke. I have a lot of followers who've been there for years. And then it's the ones who've just showed up, a week before that are the problem because they see something and they go, oh my God, this guy is a maniac. And I'm like, how could he say that? And they don't know the whole context, It's almost like you have to go through a dozen years of tweets to fully understand what I'm trying to do here, but which is basically to have fun and to educate people.
Well, I think on the side of like humor, it is such a powerful way to get through to people. And also I've always found from my days in the city that the guys there had the most amazing senses of humor.
My sense is, Paul, that when money's at stake, people come to decisions very quickly.
Well, it takes a special sort of, a certain sort, not necessarily special, but just a certain type of brain to get drawn into that. I mean, some of the studies I've done about psychology and how the brain works explain that to me in a way that, like, for example, I may have used this before, but it's absolutely true that, when you get those emails that say, some African prince is trying to get money out of the country, and could you
Send your bank details?
send your
Yeah.
bank details
We'll
and all
sort
that.
you out.
Right. So you
Yes,
look at that. You
Nigerian
look at
scam.
that. Rudy, you look at that. I'll look at that. Tim, you'll look at that and just go, okay, who's he trying to fool here? This is absolutely ridiculous. But there are certain personality types that look at that and go, "Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm so lucky. I'll better send them money." And you'd be like, "How could you think that?" Now, and it's not necessarily stupidity. It's in the same way that
They're optimistic people. They believe the best of everything.
not necessarily, because that's a naivety. It's literally the way their brain is wired, and and there are enough people out there that it makes sense for these people to spam, because of course 99.9%, small percentage. That's all they're going
Janet Yellen is one of those people.
But it is.
Yeah.
She's happy to send American taxpayers' money to African princes.
But this is
the old Ron Paul quote: "Take money from poor people in America and send it to rich people in other countries." That's foreign aid. Yeah.
But that's the like some people are brilliant at art. They just see things in a completely different way. It's quite. I find it really interesting.
That's what I try to do.
And how do you find that? How do you define intelligence? I've always found that a really interesting question.
There's a lot of different types of intelligence.
The ability to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Well, I think a few people would fail that, wouldn't they?
There's a great. I posted the video clip of this from The Wire, the TV show The Wire. Have you ever seen that?
Fantastic, best thing I've ever on television.
Yeah. It's like it's probably one of the top things ever.
Dickensian in scope.
So these kids, there's a season where they just do inner city schools in Baltimore, and it's horrific. And it's not really because of the kids, just because of the environment and the teachers union and
juking the stats,
everything. But I'm saying there's a scene where the teacher, who's a cool guy in the show, is like writing a math problem on the board. And he says, "It's the answer A, B, C, or D?" And he asks the question, and nobody knows the answer. And then this one kid raises his hand and goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, the answer is B, and 47." And the teacher's like, "How did you know that? Come up and show me how you knew that." So the kid goes up, and it's a chalkboard. And so all around, he explains that, well, look at all these little check marks around the B. You had class earlier, and I noticed that, and so you must have done the same
really
thing,
yeah.
And so that's how I knew, and so that was the correct answer. And the teacher just looks at him like, yeah, I mean, to me that's a form of intelligence,
Yeah.
And I'm always
street smart.
Yeah. It's like Fat Tony in the Talib books, if you've read them.
Yeah. There's various types of intelligence. Like, I can't work on a car. I mean, to me, if you can, take apart an engine and put it back together and the car still runs, that's a form of intelligence that I don't have. I wish I had. Maybe I could learn it, but I never did. So I have respect for that. I have respect for plumbers or electricians or anybody. I respect for it. My basic default thing is I treat everyone nice until I have a good reason not to, and so I always just start from that basis, and that's a good way to be. It's So John Cleese, I want to tell you, you were talking about laughter. I have a good John Cleese quote, but I joked that on Twitter that I like to think of all the lives I've saved during COVID with my gallows humor. So, because that tends to be my sort of dark humor. But laughter is a force for democracy. Here's John Cleese. BBC 2001. I'm struck by how laughter connects you with people. It's almost impossible to maintain any kind of distance or any sense of social hierarchy when you're just howling with laughter. Laughter is a force for democracy.
Brilliant.
So that's about as good a quote as I found on laughter.
That may be what the Trump administration is all about.
Maybe.
We won't have war as long as we can laugh at him.
Make satire great again. Yes. Yeah.
So, I have this personal definition of intelligence that I think kind of sums up all the different types of intelligence that you can have in the sense of what you've just said, which is I think it's the ability to come to a useful conclusion from limited information, and that can apply to anything. So for example, it could apply to art. It could, if you're a sports person, it could be football, someone's passed a ball and you've got limited information of how you deal with it. It could be a physical thing, but it could be a mental thing. Because you could say, is intelligence being able to remember facts? Well, partly, but is that really intelligence, or is it just having a good memory? And it speaks to what you were saying there about this kid who's got limited information, he's looking at the board, and he's come to a conclusion, but not using the information that other people...
An unorthodox way of doing it.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be unorthodox. It just has to... You have to just draw a conclusion. And it applies so much to the markets as well, because we always have very limited information, and we're all just trying to draw a conclusion from that and choose which information we feel is right, or in order to confirm or deny our views. And that uncertainty is what makes us humble, or makes most people I think I respect humble, because we know that the markets can do things that you don't expect, and nobody knows 100% as to how things are going to pan out. And it bloody well helps to have a good sense of humor.
Always look on the bright side of life.
Yeah. There was a movie with that. Yeah, I know. Life of Brian.
You know, this day and age, if people don't like something, if people call you an idiot or whatever on Twitter, it's because their views are so fragile that you can burst them with just a comment, and that is incredible. You know, I don't understand that at all. If your views are so so fragile that you're relying on other people to agree with you in order to make it right, then you don't really have a view at all. It's just ridiculous. You need to go back and do a bit more research into why you think what you think. But
yeah, well, I'm quite comfortable not being in the crowd. I mean, you know, being in the crowd's more fun, but I have no problem if everybody largely disagrees with me. I mean, I've called myself, what I do is aberrant FinTwit. You know, it's and aberrant. If you look it up, it just means not the norm.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you.
I mean, I think that's another thing. I mean, Tim managing a fund, people disagree. He must have had massive outside pressure, looking at the way the markets were going and having such a strong opinion on gold and gold and everything precious metals. You just have to stick with that. I mean, another mind would go, okay, we need to switch and start buying stocks or doing something different. You know, it's that really difficult line to walk, in the sense of you're not arrogant about your view, but you're also not willing to be drawn into the kind of crowd, which is so very tempting, especially as you were saying at the top of the .com bull move. It just draws everybody. Everyone thinks they can avoid it, but it will draw everybody in. And it's also why Tony Deedon is such an exceptional person, with the way that he sort of shields himself from all of this, and why there aren't, again, why Buffett is such an unusual person, in the sense that billionaire, drives the same car, apparently goes to McDonald's for his breakfast. I'm not sure I really believe that.
I hope he has a driver and a bodyguard nowadays.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But but his website is probably, there's no graphics on it. It's as simple.
Well, and he pays himself $100,000 a year. I mean, if he was Larry Ellison, he'd pay himself, $10 billion a year.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I heard this. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard a story of him getting into a lift with a bunch of guys, and there was like 10 cents or something on the floor, and everyone just sort of ignored it, and he picked it up, and it was like,
I still do that.
Well, why not? It's money, right? But that was the thing that was his mindset, and it was like, it must have come from when he was a kid selling. I've not read his books. It's the book Snowball, I think, was his biography.
Yeah, but an economist would say that dime didn't exist, because it would have already been picked up by now.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So I didn't. Buffett is just an amazing guy. I wish we would have had more people in leadership and CEO level with his sort of prestige who would have spoken out against, the stuff, the policies of the Fed and the government over the years.
I thought Elon was going to do that. I really did. I at one stage I thought, look, he's bought Twitter. He's kind of inverted commas, saves free speech. I don't know. I know there's always doubts over somebody, so I never really know whether
he's kind of a technocrat, which I mentioned in my next Substack. I'm a little, he's done some good things. He's done some. I'm still a little leery.
What do you think, Tim? You were always really,
my jury's out. So I think, as Rudy says, I think there's lots of good there that can be cited, but I'm not so. My jury's out on things like Neuralink, on Starlink, and whatever the hell it is. And there's just, I mean,
well, yeah.
Oscar Wilde said the truth is rarely pure and never simple, and I think that's the case for everybody.
Oh, he's got some great quotes, doesn't he? I love Oscar Wilde. I haven't really read him, but I'm sorry, what?
Oh, sorry. I was saying, I thought you meant Tim there, because Tim has.
No, well, I've got lots of great Oscar Wilde quotes.
He's got
Tim has great quotes too.
Yeah. He's the quote master.
No. I mean, there's certain guys like Orwell's quotes are like, God, lately, the last 5 years, they're timeless, right? I mean, you could just, there's so many passages, reading old books. Like there's a book called Only Yesterday.
Fantastic.
About the 20s. And I swear, you could take entire paragraphs out of there and plug them into an FT story today and no one would notice, know.
But so the idea that Wall Street could close and there'd be Apple days when New York City brokers would sell apples because the market was in such
those were the days.
Dire state.
Wow.
Bring back Apple days.
I didn't know that. That's amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah. I just think, hey, I've done well on Wall Street, but I think that stocks going up is not the number one priority. And I think it's been treated as the number one priority for the last 15, 20 years.
But Rudy, if you were, let's say you were in politics, the problem with politics is people like you who have these principles don't go into politics. And if you do go into politics, suddenly, whether it's by design, you become corrupted, and it's like it might not be your intention, but it may be all sorts of pressures that we don't see on the other side of the curtain. It might be like maybe threats to your family, maybe lots of other things where you have to do it, and we think, well, why are these people doing it? I mean, who knows? I'm not saying it is. I'd like to think
don't go to parties in Washington D.C. with kids running around.
Yeah, Congressman was explaining that. He goes,
I didn't know that.
Blackmail is a huge factor, I think, in politics.
One nation under blackmail.
Yes, Whitney Webb, the best. Yeah, she's great.
So it's literally
Nick Bryant's good too. If anybody out there interested in the corruption, Nick Bryant, Bryant, along with Whitney Webb, Webb, both I highly respect, and I don't say that about a lot of journalists.
So it is like The Godfather, then, pretty much.
Yeah. Compromat.
I did wonder.
Well, Trump promised to in both 2016 and 2020, I think it was in the GOP platform, to bring back Glass-Steagall. I haven't seen that come back yet. Look at carried interest, which is a huge tax break for private equity types, the billionaires. And both the Biden and Trump, I think in their, they both made comments about how they're going to get rid of carried interest. And of course, neither of them did.
I think to be fair to Trump, he has introduced Chinese walls between Trump coin and Melania coin. So
what, is he sleeping in his spare bedroom?
Again, it just kind of, why do you do that? Because you lose so many people who may otherwise like some of your policies, so don't do that.
So unnecessary.
It's so unnecessary. It's just greed. It's avarice. I don't know what it is. Avarice.
It's absolutely
nothing
ridiculous.
new under the sun.
Yeah. It takes maybe he did it because he could, and that's not really a good answer, is it?
and again, the problem in America, and I'm sure it's a problem in Europe too, is if I say this, people go, "Yeah, that's so corrupt," and I'll go, and then Biden, in Ukraine in 2014 with his son, and he gets a job, and that was so corrupt, and Clinton taking the Chinese Communist Party money, Obama, being in the, basically just working, for Wall Street the whole time, and people go, "No, no, wait, what are you talking about? No, 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 no." They'll be like mad at me, and I go, "Yeah, but." They'll go, "It's Trump," and I go, "Yeah, what Trump's doing is wrong. He should not be doing that." But where we could have used you the last 3 or 4 presidencies, and again, it could be George Bush too. There's a lot of stuff. It's people so much. There's a picture I post where it's a woman or a little girl telling her mom, "Mom, a man touched me in a bad way," and the mom's response is, "Was he a Democrat or a Republican?" And I try not to ever do that. And I'm sure I'm guilty at times of not doing that. But I mean, I think I tell people, I don't care. I don't care what letter is after someone's name if they're doing something that I think is egregious. So more people should do that, I think. But
Yeah.
like you said, tribal, I use that word a lot. I think the majority of people probably do it. We only see the extremes generally on social media and certainly on the cable news now. I mean, I can't even once something's going on like an election or a war or something, I might flip between the channels, and I always try to see, okay, what's MSNBC saying? Okay, what's CNN saying? What's Fox saying? So I get all sides, and it's like I'm just shaking my head, going, click. The best advice I can give to anybody now is stop watching all cable news. And I gave this advice, 8 years ago, but I highly recommend it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a technical person, that's always been the as far as the markets go, don't ever watch the news. It's like you won't get anything from it. But
well,
yeah,
I do have a bad habit that I'm called out on. I do have on my Thinkorswim app in the background on my computer, I have a little CNBC running, and it does cause brain damage. I guarantee you. My IQ, I can feel it dropping every day. But it's a great source of both the zeitgeist, picking up on what the rich pundits are saying, and also just a great source of comedy.
Yeah.
And also history. I have some screenshots that I think maybe in textbooks 100 years from now that that don't exist anywhere else. You know what I mean? Because so much, well, of course, maybe Twitter gets deleted too, but so much digital history is deleted, especially videos. So I tell people, if you see something you want to save, just download it yourself to your hard disk and put it on a thumb drive or something, because it's going to get, so much stuff has been deleted, and archive.org has saved a lot. And if that ever goes away, we're in big trouble.
Well, that's what the blockchain should be for. That's actually perfect for that for that purpose to store information, but
store history.
Just before, I can't believe how it's been nearly 2 hours, and it just feels like we're just getting going. But I know we are.
Let's go have a beer.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that would be fantastic.
A pint.
Yeah. Oh, if you ever come
I'd
to
have
London,
to fly over.
Yeah, definitely. Just a quick outlook on the markets. What are you seeing as short term and perhaps longer term risks going forward?
You got a spare couple of days, Paul?
Yeah, I know, bloody hell. Yeah. But I've got to ask, haven't I?
I have a very weird portfolio. It's very non-diversified, very, very concentrated. I have more cash than I've had in a while. So I'm sitting with some dry powder.
You are Warren Buffett, and I claim my $100.
I'm using the voice modulator. What saved me over
you
all
haven't,
these
you
years,
haven't praised Coca-Cola yet, so we know it's not you.
Oh, really. I'm thinking about that years ago too. Anyway, where were we?
Short-term, long-term.
Your investments.
Okay. I'm never levered. I don't use leverage, which has saved me over the years. And, we're always bailing out. I've also never needed a bailout, so we're always bailing out guys. Why are we bailing out? Why do governments collapse? Why do people collapse? Why do companies collapse? So it's always almost always leverage. So there's no limits on leverage, apparently. I know the banks, but they're still levered to the gills, and they have off balance sheet and everything else. Leverage is a huge problem because that's what causes things to blow up and become illiquid, and force the Fed to, keep billionaires billionaires. I mean, a lot of what they've done since '08 is to bail out, make it so that billionaires don't become multi-mega millionaires. You know what I mean? They're trying to save some very, very well-off people. Anyway, as far as me, I'm long. I'm bearish in theory, but not in practice.
Right.
I've always been long, and I had to point that out over the years because people are like, "Well, you're saying this is overvalued or this, and you must be short." And
But you can't shelter in cash in an inflationary environment.
No, I understand. Believe me, I'm very, very well aware of that. I mean, if I'm getting,
I'm saying for the people who are the naysayers.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm at 2-year notes or something, I'm getting 4%. I mean, yeah, I'm losing money. According to them, I might be making a little, but I'm not. I'm losing money. I understand that, but it's better to lose 1 or 2% nominal or in real terms than to lose 25%. I'm not super bearish right now. I mean, they sure look like something was going on. I don't know. There's smart people. I was just listening to a guy named Chris Sidiel, who's a trader, a volatility trader, and he thinks that this is a bear market. There's a number of smart people that think it's a bear market, and there's a number of smart people that think it's a bull market. And that's been the way for the last 40 years. So I really don't try to have a strong opinion. I own stuff that, as Warren Buffett says, if the market closed for 10 years, would I be okay? And that's how I look at it. If I die, I mean, several of my dozen, I mean, I have like 10 holdings, and 3 or 4 of them I've had for probably 30 years.
So do you share that with your Substack? Is that part of your?
No, I don't, because I don't want to be accused. I don't know what regulations I have to do. I don't want to be an investment advisor. I don't want to manage other people's money. I'd be a terrible person to manage other people's money. Oh, so Godspeed to you. It's got to be a tough job because I'm quite comfortable taking pain because I don't think volatility is risk. I think permanent loss of capital is risk. And this is, Tony Deaton 101, right? Permanent loss of capital. And I am willing to endure some pain in a holding if I, going against the crowd, believe in it. Now, I understand that's also a good way to go, lose a lot of money and go broke, catching falling knives and things like that. But I'm comfortable buying something, and then if it goes lower, I'll add to it if I still have faith in it. And of course, if you're a money manager and you don't own NVIDIA, and I've never owned, as far as I can remember, never owned it. Maybe back 25 years ago, I owned NVIDIA. I don't own the cool stuff. I don't own any of the cool stuff. I may trade. I have so I have like core holdings, and then I'll just like trade. But I trade, once every couple months or something. I mean, especially now, I'm just sitting on it. I've done very well considering how bizarre my portfolio is, and the fact that I don't own any of the cool stocks, except indirectly, maybe. But yeah, I don't go to anywhere for stock recommendations. I read a lot of macro, even though I think macro is probably completely useless for stock picking, as a guy Jason Shapiro likes to say. So I just have my portfolio, and it goes up, it goes down. I'm a caveman, I say. I buy stocks with no leverage, and sometimes I sell them. The last time I was short was 2009. And you know what? I've never asked.
And you go short, which is interesting.
Yeah, but that was '09. That was a little bit different time. That was before you realized that the Fed was insane. So
Yellen
was saying we should.
So you're long
Yellen
on
was
cash.
saying. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying. I was just trying to get to the bottom of how you view the market. So are you long or cash, or will you go short again at some point?
I will not. I don't think in this environment, under this monetary regime, I could ever go short again because they've proven that they will go with the money spigot. Okay, you want a market view? I'm bullish nominally. Okay, because if you look at the worst case scenario for me, which is for most Americans would be like a hyperinflation. You look at hyperinflations, including the German one. The quality stocks, in other words, the stocks that weren't the ones that only exist because of ZERP and QE or whatever. The quality stocks, if you were able to hold on to them throughout the hyperinflation, you actually nominally did okay. And so I am not going to bet against the nominal prices of stocks over the long term. Now, could we have a 50% drop in the indexes like we did in 08, 09 and 01 to 03? Yeah. And I rode those out. I mean, I did not sell at the bottom. I don't panic. And I think bottoms are a lot easier to spot than tops. So I don't know if we're at a top now. I don't know. There's people calling for a brand new bull market from here. There's other people talking, about the Dow or the S&P collapsing. So I don't know. I've heard these narratives my entire life in the market. I don't know. I don't have an answer. There's smart people who've been brilliant on their picks over the years, and there's smart people that have been at the same time they've also been wrong. So my holdings are inflation oriented, largely. For example, I mentioned before the Horizon Kinetics funds. I like those guys because I don't know if you know Steve Bregman and Murray Stahl or anything, but look them up, Horizon Kinetics. They have a very, I think, unique view of, well, not unique, but an interesting view on inflation. They tend to buy stocks that benefit from inflation. For example, royalty streamers, not just gold or silver or other items like coal, or, they'll buy things where labor costs won't really affect them, if they go up. Because, you own a gold mine. The problem with, I've made some of my best money in gold miners over the years. But as I say, I date them, you don't marry them. You know what I mean? They do nothing, and then they fall, and then they go to the moon, and then they kind of fall again. I don't trust the management. It goes back to the management. But I will trade them, from time to time. I know that historically they're dirt cheap versus the price of gold. Could they get cheaper? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of, I think Bitcoin and the crypto has taken a lot of attention away from gold, although I think gold is better than those, but I'll run into a lot of disagreement with that. But I'm a gold guy. I'm like a old school gold guy like you guys. So anyway, if someone's looking for stock picks for me, I don't know. I just say go to the Horizon Kinetics website and read their quarterly reports, or go to Tim Price's, and read his stuff.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It is fantastic.
I'm sorry, I can't give you a better answer.
No.
I don't. Here's my top 5 picks for the. I own what I own, and I will own it. And I've sat, like I said, some of my stocks I've owned 30 years, so I've sat through watching them go down 50%. And I probably will, and then generally at some point I will add to them. Usually I'll add to them, and then they'll go down, and then I'll add more, and they'll go down. But I'm quite comfortable with fluctuations in the market. And I think what we've done since 08 is just, no, we can't have any fluctuations. Yeah. And that hurts the market. We don't have a free market anymore. It's all scripted.
To be honest with you, Rudy, I'm more interested in why you make your decisions and what you do, not your holdings. So it's like, I don't think, like, if you came on and said, I think this is, but you've explained it, but it was more like, if you come on and say,
me to say, what's my paradigm?
Some people might say, give me a stock tip, or what the next, give me 5 things that you think are going to go up. And that's not useful. I don't think that's useful. I think it's much more interesting to know
framework,
why you're doing what you're doing, how you filter information out, what you may want to do, and what you consider to be important. So, what I get from this is that you feel that there's lots of people talking in both directions. That's not enough to move you from your core position, which is that you're going to defend your portfolio from inflation. So it's basically inflation protected, and and within that, the store of gold has got to be a core part of it. And that to me makes perfect sense. It doesn't need any more sort of explanation. So if you
I'll just say throughout, like I've tried to explain about how did I get into this whole finance topic. It's all been like absorbing and my own intuition into, after I've read 100 books and listened to 500 podcasts and read and traded and made my mistakes. It just kind of, it's all soaked in. And so I can't really explain, why I do what I do. I mean, so many guys come on, we have a systematic formula of how we pick stocks. I don't. It's almost like, I'll go, gosh, I'll look at, like I mentioned the example, another podcast of McDonald's dropping to $9 or something in 2009. I was this close to buying it. And And I didn't. And then, of course, it went to 7. And then it went at the time of the podcast, because, it's a year ago, I was talking to a lady on a podcast. It was like at $287 or something. But I kind of knew, that's what I regret. I knew, you know what? I don't think McDonald's going out of business. And it's come down pretty much. I should have I generally put large, big positions on. And I probably should have started at least, dipping my toe in McDonald's then. But of course, what would have happened is I would have bought it at 9, where I thought it was a good value. And then it went to 8, and then it went to 7. And I like to think, and generally in my experiences, what I would have done was I would have bought more at 8, and I would have bought more at 7. And then if it had gone out of business, I would have said, well, you learned another lesson. But it didn't. And it went to 287. And I could have had that whole gain, because I'm pretty good at holding on. And I didn't. So that's an example where I just knew in my gut. And how, I don't know, I just happened to see on the screen, oh, look at McDonald down $9. $9, wasn't it at like $20? So it's like what I do on Twitter. It's like I say it's stream of consciousness. It's like Kamala Harris. I have this knowledge, or what I think is knowledge, in my brain over 40 years of paying attention. And sometimes I notice things, and I'm really good at drawing connections from one thing to another. And so I'll notice things and I'll go, you know what? Sometimes I'll say, I should buy that. I'm going to buy that. I like that. And I don't have any other explanation than that.
Brilliant. It's brilliant that you trust it. And even Buffett talks about your intuition being what you should follow. What was the quote he used? It's like something to do with
I don't know that one.
Chains of habit and your intuition. I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but
it works on the sell side too. I mean, I have had several times over in my life where I've gone, I woke up one thing, and I'm looking at chart. I look at charts. I'm kind of a novice on that. I can't claim to be a chart expert, but I'm very familiar with them. And for some reason, I just get a feeling. I go, I'm just going to sell all of my gold miners today. And what has happened more often than not is they'll go up for another week or something, and I'll regret it. And then there'll be some collapse, or replace gold miners with any stock.
Yeah.
And so I will, again, I guess I would just call it gut instinct. And I guess over the years, hey, I like I said, I look at my 401k, it gives you the performance stats. I'm like, wow, I don't know how I did that, but I would say that I always had too much cash, so that I was never forced to sell anything to raise cash. And that's key. I want to be buying when Bill Ackman's on TV crying for a bailout, and when people are puking up stocks.
Yeah.
Although Bill Ackman later came on 2 weeks later and said he made $2.9 billion from the bounce. So don't get me started on that guy. And I posted on that. But anyway, we need to quit bailing people out. I'm not, there's guys on Wall Street are much smarter than me on this stuff. And if they get levered up and they blow up, they should, so what? Let them blow up. And people say, oh, the world will end.
No, it won't.
The world, the financial system will collapse. Well, that's BS. That's what people who just had their ass handed.
But even if it does, weak money goes to stronger money. Weak hands.
Hey, creative destruction.
Exactly, it Schumpeter.
Yeah, creative destruction. So I am so against. Again, it goes back to too big to fail, too big to jail. That needs to be ended. We're privatizing profits and socializing losses.
Rudy, I think should we pick the media picks that we've spoken about on the way, or
no? I got another one in mind. It's really odd.
Fantastic. Tim, sorry, is it okay to go to media picks?
Let's go for media picks.
Any final questions?
Fine.
Yeah,
we could go another 2.5 hours.
We really could.
Hey, well, maybe unless all your subscribers send you hate mail, we can do this again sometime.
If they did,
we'd love to.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic.
Okay, so besides, like I said, I have very eclectic interests. I'm interested in a lot of things. One of them is what I would call high strangeness sort of things, sort of like, I don't know if you're familiar with Charles Fort, Fortean Times. Yeah, that sort of thing. Things that are just out of place, that don't make sense, that science doesn't understand, or that we haven't explained yet. So I like that sort of thing.
The Keir Starmer government, for example.
yeah, exactly. How do you guys pick that? How did you pick that?
How did that happen?
God only knows.
How did that happen? Anyway, so there's a trilogy. So this is a challenge that I've just gone through. These are, again, nonfiction. It's by a guy named Peter Levenda, Levenda. And this is actually the most recent books, 3 of them, that I read cover to cover. although it's not an easy read. A lot of it is like research, and he's heavily footnoted, and it'll blow your mind. And you're going to read things, and you're just going to go, what? But he ties it all together. It's very fascinating. And if you don't believe something he's saying, check the footnotes. But anyway, Peter Levena, and the book is called Sinister Forces. And it's 3 volumes, and it's as he puts, the subtitle is A Grimoire of American Political Witchcraft, and it's fascinating. I loved it, and it ties together, bring everything from bringing the Nazis over, after World War II, Operation, what was that, Paperclip?
Paperclip.
Yeah, and but it covers the Manson killings, and it covers H.P. Lovecraft, and it just ties, and it goes back to colonial times. It starts actually pre-colonial times. This thing is an overview of American history from a high strangeness point of view, and a coincidence point of view. Let me find a quote really quick from Charles Fort, and this is totally me. My liveliest interest is not so much in things as in relations of things. I have spent much time thinking about the alleged pseudo-relations that are called coincidences. What if some of them should not be coincidences? So that I love that quote, and I think people will read it and go, God, this guy must be insane to like this book. But it's actually a very interesting book, and it sends you off on a. Believe me, I went down I got a bunch of other books that were mentioned in this book, or found other sources, because he talks about things and you're like, wow, is that true? And sure enough, they are. And I actually, I'll repost on my Twitter account a review of the book, which I thought was fair. Because it's not a perfect book, or perfect 3 books. But anyway, I would recommend that if you're open-minded. It's not for everyone. And you have to have a curiosity about things that don't make sense.
And you can research some of the things that he talks about. Is that right? Is there information out there?
Oh yeah. He, like I said, in his book, he'll have, like in the footnotes, he has all the books where he gets his information from.
Right.
And it's amazing. It's like Whitney Webb. Her book is like 924 pages or something on well, it's not even on Epstein. It's basically on the partnership between organized crime and government and intelligence. But her footnotes, when I was first getting into Whitney years ago, reading her stuff, I'd go, oh, what? And then I'd look at the footnote. She'd have a footnote, and there's a book. I'd go find that book, and God, she's right. So after fact checking her so many times and finding out, God, this is all true, I said, wow, that's I don't need I trust her. And so anyway, Levena, it's not very familiar with him, but his book is fascinating. And Paul Krasner, I think, contributes to part of it. And he's another one. He was one of the 60s radicals who normally would be someone you would think I wouldn't have any interest in. But I really liked some of his stuff too. For example, he's the investigative satirist I mentioned earlier. But anyway, that's a weird book for you if you want it. So,
brilliant. Thank you. And Tim, what have you got for us?
So mine is this. I feel a bit of a charlatan with this one because it's based on a book I've never read and a film I've never seen. So the book is The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. The film is The Island of Dr. Moreau from 1996 with Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer, which I've never seen. But the film I have seen is a documentary about it called Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, which came out actually in 2014.
Oh, wow.
So the premise behind this is Richard Stanley, he'd done 2 films that I have seen. One of them is called Dust Devil, and the other one is called something machine horror, sort of Terminator type thing. Anyhow, Richard Stanley had a passion project to make The Island of Dr. Moreau, and he got the finance for it finally. And then it was complicated by the fact that, firstly, Marlon Brando basically capsizes everything he has to do with films, or he has done that for the last 30, 40 years. And then Val Kilmer was apparently a gigantic dick during the making of this film.
Oh, wow.
And then the weather destroyed the set, and then ultimately David Gregory the Richard Stanley, who's the director, got replaced. And basically, it's a lot like if you've seen Hearts of Darkness, which is a documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now. It's almost identical, just on a slightly smaller scale. And the weird thing is that Marlon Brando is the common link between the two. So he arrived at both grossly overweight and didn't know his lines. And
Shaved his head?
I think he had some hair, but not very much. But basically, it's a kind of tragi comedy. The Island of Dr. Moreau is widely perceived to be one of the worst films ever made. And as regular listeners will know, Paul and I regularly exchange notes on the worst film ever made. We've touched on a few of them, but The Island of Dr. Moreau on IMDb has a 4.6 score, which is pretty low.
That's bad.
I may never see the film, but this is like a tragedy because it's someone who put his heart, soul, and probably devoted an enormous amount of time and money to make something, and then he basically gets jettisoned because the Hollywood sort of just gets cold feet. And then the two stars basically ruin whatever's left of this. But it's a fascinating example of whatever can go wrong, going wrong in the context of a film. And it's in the same league as Hearts of Darkness, which is just it's car crash watching. It's a guilty pleasure. But it's called Lost Soul: The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. And on the back of this, I may never see either the film or read the book, but I don't think I need to. But it's just fascinating and tragic.
Fantastic.
I saw the movie. It's years ago. It's awful,
and it's crap. It's apparently it's beyond crap. Apparently,
I remember at a theater. It was bad.
So mine slightly veering off from Black Mirror and all the other things we've looked at. I think I need something slightly more light-hearted, and it's
our listeners need to be boosted after the last 2.5 hours of doom scrolling.
So we made a few jokes.
True. Absolutely. Rudy, are you familiar with Wallace and Gromit, the stop motion animation?
I'm familiar with it. I'm not a regular.
It's Nick Park, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. So they're kind of like I think they're reaching the end of all the series that they're making, but the last one that they made, I'm not saying it's the last one, but the last one that they made, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl. I just really loved it. It came out at Christmas. Hopefully it'll go on the streaming services and people will be able to pick it up. But I just thought it's classic British humor. It's really sort of sarcastic, very well written, really good story, lovely bit of escapism. And I just thought it was great. And what they actually do with this stop motion animation is absolutely incredible. It's just works of art, really. So it's mind-boggling in terms of how they made it as much as how good the story is. So I thought I'd throw that one in. But Rudy, we have got to have you back on the show. It's been so much fun. And as you say, we could continue for hours more. Let everybody know your Substack or any other links that you would like to share with them so they can speak to you directly.
Sure. So I'll get the European audience here. It's Rudy Havenstein on Twitter, one word, Havenstein. And then I have a Substack, also kind of eclectic, Rudy, but financially oriented generally, rudy.substack.com. And you guys are great. I hope I didn't talk too much, and you guys are easy to talk to.
Not at all. We absolutely love it. That
we have the first American Pope, and I still think it may be Rudy.
Oh, is he an American?
It's Robert Prevost or Prevost.
Oh, okay, I'm not.
Becomes first American Pope and will be known as Pope Leo XIV.
Is that what he's going with? Okay.
And he looks suspiciously like Tony Deedon.
Maybe it is. I wish it. Yeah, maybe Tony would be a good pick. Put Tony at the head of the Fed or Jim Grant. Yeah.
Oh,
and you heard it here first.
All right.
Amazing. Rudy, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will definitely contact you again to get you back on. Thank you so much.
Oh, you guys are great. Thank you very much. Had a ball.
Cheers, Rudy. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research or contact a professional advisor.